Here we go. Hello, everyone. We're here with Haley Jakobson.
Yeah.
I am so excited. Even though I've literally already interviewed you, I feel like that was so nerve-wracking. Like we were in front of 150 people. It was your launch day.
I
I feel like
know.
now we can just kind of gab and like go back and forth. It's like
Chit chat.
chit chat, less formal. But hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your Saturday to come talk about what I think is probably our most loved Sapph-Lit pick of all time. I've never seen such a response to a book like I have with Old Enough, and I was lucky enough to read it before it came out. I texted Haley throughout the entire day as I was reading it, like sending my live reactions, showing her videos of me sobbing. And yeah, I just love this book. I just love you. And I can't wait to hear about how this last month of your baby being in the world has been.
I can't wait to talk about it. And as you know, I'm so grateful for you. And it just feels so, it's so crazy that, a few years ago when I was writing this book and I found you and your TikTok and like we just had, some bizarre overlap in this life and just I always think like of who my readers are and like who I wrote this book for, and you were such a someone early on where I was like, I just gotta write this book so I can get it to Nina. And it was just so special.
I'm PMSing this week, so like I might cry in this interview. I'm like, I don't even think I have tissues near me, but just I'm gonna be prepared for that.
I want the tears. I want to see them. So yeah, it's crazy that the book's been out for over a month. So everyone's gonna keep their cameras off.
Yeah, no, this is generally it's a camera off crew when
Okay.
we have this, but y'all are welcome to have the cameras on. I would love to see your little faces at the top of my screen.
I
You
mean, I'd be thrilled to see some
Yeah,
faces if
here
anyone's
we
feeling
go.
okay.
If you turn your camera on, you're not recorded. I do not worry. If you've seen our
Oh my God, look how brave the gays are. They're so brave. Oh my God. Yay. Oh, Katie, hi. Oh, look at my people. Some of my people are here. Yes, I love this. This feels really good.
Yeah. And for those who are on the call, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So as we're talking, if you already have questions in mind, pop them in the chat at any point during the interview, and we will set aside time at the end to get to them. But we're going to be here for about an hour just chilling, and I'm so happy about it. But Haley, again, congratulations on Old Enough. My favorite book ever. You know how much I love it. I literally have it tattooed on my body, as do you. Um, as do a lot of people from the launch party. But it's such a, like you've always said, your book is so many things. It's everything. It's coming of age, it's queer campus, it's a story of survival and dealing with a friendship breakup and, discovering bisexuality. It covers so many different topics. And I'm so curious with your big gay bisexual novel coming into the world last month. What has the last month been for you? Like, what have been your highlights, surprising moments? I want to hear everything.
Yeah, it's been wild. As many of you know, or actually maybe some people don't know, I've been writing online for a decade. And, my writing online was never sort of like a means to an end. Like I seriously love it. I love social media. I love kind of inhabiting this special corner of the internet and this niche. But because of that, I've developed relationships with people or had like long standing, readers who have been with me for years and years, watched this journey of me writing my book, have been around for my self-published poetry book where like no more copies exist of that book, like been through so much with me. And then, going on this tour for the past month, I got to meet so many of those people and I've never met them in person. And I have a lot of students that I'm seeing here right now. I got to meet a lot of my students in person and I only teach virtually. And so I would say that was like I don't think I really could have imagined what that would feel like. And that has just been so incredibly special. I've met people that I've been talking to online for like 7 years. So that has just been amazing. And then also, I've known that like my corner of the internet has the best people. Like I've known that for a very long time, but meeting people in person, and then obviously, readers who are new to my work, found me because of Old Enough. It's just been incredible during these Q&As to talk to people, and they are just so smart. Like, and every city is a little bit different. Some cities ask the touchy-feely questions, and some are, we're like in an AP English class kind of questions. And it's just been so gratifying and amazing, because you write a book in isolation. Like, I had a lot of support, but it was me and my computer. I mean, many of the folks here, I presume, are writers. Like it's a lonely sort of endeavor, and I love attention. So it's hard for me. But just meeting people and having conversations about books, I think it really, it's been so healing, I think, for like, little Haley, who just, all I did was read, right? Like I nerded out over books. Always books for like my love language, and my friends. And so to be able to like go around the country and just like sit and talk about books, my book has just been, I mean, so incredible. And I'm a Gemini, I love to talk, so it's just been one big gab fest. So that's been incredible. And then, I think another thing that I've been saying is like, it's not all one thing. Like it is, to be on the other side of your biggest dream is a mixed bag. And it's like the shelf life of a book is so long, and it has only been a month, and in this month there's been highs and lows, and moments of kind of stagnation, moments of like what's next. And I'm just like, I'm so glad that I'm 30, been in therapy for 8 years. Like I'm so happy that I'm at this point in my life, because I have so many tools to kind of cope with just the reality of what it is to step into the next chapter of your life. But I don't have it all figured out. And like, yeah, it's like crazy to see your name in the New York Times more than once, but it's also like, I'm still sitting here like in my apartment being like, cool, on my phone. Like life goes on. So
Yeah.
I think it's important not to sort of shatter the illusion that everything is not wonderful and beautiful. It is, but it's just a lot more nuanced and textured than that. And I think in a lot of ways that is a good thing, because like ultimately I am not my career. Like I am the person living my life, and life should have a lot of nuance. And like what's behind the page, what's behind the book. And it's me here.
Also, side note, if you see like a little pink thing pop up, it's my pen. I use a
Oh,
Sanrio
she's
multicolored
she's
pen.
gorgeous.
I have like 4 more of them. So yeah, if you see that, it's just because I have my little notebook here. But yeah, you've been doing so much press. You were saying earlier, before everyone hopped on, that, you've done so many interviews over the past few months. And me, I've interviewed more authors than I even thought would be possible, and I'm so lucky to do that. So besides the questions that I ask you, what are the favorite questions that you've gotten about Old Enough? Like what surprised you? What have you loved answering?
My gosh, yeah, it's been, I mean, obviously my book is around 300 pages. And so I'm like, I don't think I've ever truly sat and read my book all the way through. But like, for me, I'm a non-linear author. So I stitch so many things together. And so there's, and I've talked to you about this, and anyone who's maybe seen me talk about this, like I am a themes first writer. So I'll write down all the themes that I want to tackle in a project, and then I'll kind of go as I write and like see what I can check off. And so there are like baby themes in Old Enough that like I wrote for me, and I wrote because I thought they were compelling and interesting, but I didn't know that they would be like a big takeaway. And so one of the things that I really thought a lot about and kind of ironed out in my book was Sapp's relationship to alcohol and how that changes over the course of the novel, and how you sort of learn about her relationship to alcohol, especially as a survivor of assault. And someone in Chicago wanted to talk to me about that, and they were a sober person, and it was so affirming, because that was one of the things that I remember having a conversation with my best friend Jake, and he would, he helped me a lot as I sort of dug into certain corners of the novel, and he was like, I see that this is there, and I think that there's more connective tissue here, and like let's really sort of dig into this theme a little bit more, because you have it and you're hinting at it, but like, what's the arc and where does it go? And again, that wasn't a conversation I really had with my editor. That was a conversation I was having with, someone who I really trust creatively. And so I'm really proud of that arc, and I know what I put into it, but I didn't know a reader was going to pick up on that. And so that was so affirming and so gratifying. And then the other thing that I've gotten that I just didn't know I was going to get was a lot of questions about Savannah's relationship with her mom. And, if you've seen the dedication to my book, it says, for my mom who listened. And my relationship with my mom, as a woman, as a survivor, is so deeply important and complicated. And so I really wanted to explore the sort of like intergenerational relationship to consent and trauma as a survivor, but also just like the journey of girlhood into womanhood, and the different representations that Sav has of older women in this book. Like, that was certainly a theme and something
Her teacher.
Yeah, so we have Professor Tolino, we have Mom, and we have Marie, the therapist. And that was something that I really looked at, those three women, what they represent to Sav. She's looking so much for a blueprint of someone that she can grow into. And while that's not a hugely well, it is an important part of the novel, but it's maybe not one of the sort of main themes. It was something I was thinking about a lot, and something that a teacher pointed out to me early on. And so that I almost get a question every tour stop about Sav's relationship with her mom, and oh my God, it just really it gets me in the gut that's something that's being picked up on. And I really want to write a mother-daughter book. And so that has just given me a lot of sort of affirmation that that's something people would be interested in. So yeah.
Yeah. The scene towards the end where Sav calls her mom was so important for me to read. It was so incredibly healing to see how positive that kind of vulnerability can be and how rewarding it can be. Have you seen the Barbie movie?
I'm seeing it today, and then I'm seeing it tomorrow with my mom. So
okay, well, please text me, because I see, I'm like, when Old Enough gets made into a movie, I need Greta Gerwig to direct it, because the ode to girlhood that Old Enough is Lady Bird, Barbie, Little Women wrapped into one, but make it so fucking gay and modern day, like, college.
I've been avoiding like all the discourse, and I can't wait to do just like a huge deep dive. But
we'll gab. We'll definitely gab.
In a row. Going home with Mom to see it tomorrow. But yeah, can't wait.
Love it. So I'm also curious about, so you are a writer on the internet, and continue to be, and have been for a decade. And I'm curious about the kind of recognition and what's important as a writer to receive back or give in writing on the internet and publishing posts on the internet, whether it be an Instagram square or a TikTok voiceover, or however you choose to share your writing online. And then you have a real physical book that has a whole different world of recognition attached to that. So what's that transition been like for you? What's important to you? And what's your favorite, like, kind of compliment that Old Enough has gotten?
Oh, good questions. I think what's real to me continues to be my audience and my readership online. I just I'm a girl's girl, like, and that's not super gendered either. Like, those are my people. And so, like, it's been really wonderful to have a lot of press recognize me. But also that a lot of that was like me really seeking that out, which, I'm just such a hustler. So, it's not like, you have people on in your publishing team who are helping make those connections, and I'm seeking out, connections that I haven't. That's like a whole other thing. But basically, this was like the past 2 years have been my years of like, I'm going to ask for help because I am such a helper. I help people make connections all the time. And so the past 2 years have been that for me. But that being said, I think what feels the most real to me is these conversations, talking to like my contemporaries, talking to people who are they're going to say to me, this book resonates with me because I can relate it to XYZ chapter of my life. And the New York Times is not going to tell me that. Like, like that's been, I
They
think,
should.
and they should, right? But that's what's been so amazing, I think, is like, for months leading up to the book coming out, the way that now books like get hyped is through early readers and early reviewers. And so I was, getting some lovely coverage by the Book Talk, Bookstagram sort of, Goodreads community. But every time I would like read a review, I would be like, oh my God, like all they're saying is like, Haley really deftly explores sexual assault. Like, but that would be it. And I would just feel like, oh my God, but is it relatable? Like, has anyone had this experience? Did I just write into the void? Like, what if we don't talk about this? Like, what if no one wants to actually have a conversation with me? And then as soon as the book came out, that's when I was getting real messages from people talking, and talking very appropriately about their experiences, never sort of unveiling things that would be difficult for me to read, because I think people take what is respectful about my book and then give that back to me, which I think is really lovely. But that just feels so real, and something that I can hold stories, right? Like articles or reviews, they're not stories. When I have real conversations with people, that's a story that I can hold, and that's what we connect with. That's why people connect with books, right? So that feels like this exchange, this reciprocity that feels so lovely and warm and holds me. And then all the press is just really exciting because it's like, oh, okay, like I really have broken into the next level. Like
Vogue, New York Times.
Right. Like that feels great. It also feels very hard won. I'm like, yeah, I've been at this for 10 years. Like, hell yeah, I'm in Vogue. Like I should be in Vogue. So it no longer feels like I'm standing on the precipice of my own life. It feels like, okay, I like fucking dove into the waters. Like I'm in it now. And now I'm just like swimming. I'm swimming. And that's good.
Love it. Oh my God, I love that so much. That's such a good feeling.
It really is.
So earlier this month, you and I were talking about the kind of now infamous article on Brandon Taylor and his fiction writing not matching up with the article's author's expectations based on her consumption of his online tweets, or now X's, I don't know.
Oh yeah, X's.
Tell us or don't go away. But we're both chronically online girlies who have experience with parasocial relationships, And we can relate to the fear of failing to meet those IRL expectations. I mean, if you've ever met me at an IRL Sapph-Lit meetup, I'm the shyest, most introverted person in the world, and I'm so scared. So please come say hi to me, because I'm scared to do it first, but just know that I'm really happy to see you. But yeah, there are, these expectations of those who follow us online, because of the persona that we've built. And you're currently evolving from having a readership for just your online writing to now also having a readership for your new fiction. And you've blown up so much over, TikTok and the book. And I've just seen you grow so beautifully online. And I would love your thoughts on the whole parasocial debacle. And I'm also curious how old enough differs in your eyes from your online writing, and how that difference might affect those parasocial relationships.
Yeah. Well, I think that, something that I think a lot about as an artist is like, where do I find my creative value? Like my creativity and my writing comes from sort of like the marrow of me. Like it's sort of the innermost depths of who I am, and it's spiritual for me, and it gives me purpose, and it feels like it's how I move through my life. And but my creativity, it's its own sort of nebulous, beautiful, undefined thing, and it goes wherever it goes, right? And so one place that I insert my creativity is online, and that's really lovely and fun. And I also am a playwright, and I deeply love theater, but I don't really bring that to my online space. But for me, it's deeply cultivated, and it's a huge part of who I am. And I am a playwright. I own that identity. I take up space in that way. Not always playwriting, I had to shutter the doors to my theater company as the pandemic hit, but that lives in me forever. And then, as a fiction writer, I've always written fiction. It's not necessarily something that I shared online. Again, like, I'm not compartmentalizing myself. It's just that creativity flows into different spaces in different ways. And we all should aspire to be genre expansive and just like see where it goes. And so I think what is really interesting, though, about how people currently exist online is like, we love to put people in a box, especially when they literally exist in a box in the box of our phone. I guess this is a rectangle, but and so for what's so interesting about this whole sort of Brandon Taylor thing is I just I was like, oh, this person maybe perhaps needs a lesson in sort of like zooming out and like integration. Can they integrate that Brandon Taylor has so many different parts of himself, and that actually what he aims to do when he writes a novel or when he's tweeting is just to explore those parts of himself. I don't think that, I think it's a very dangerous game for a creative to kind of go into any space and say like, this is how I'm going to market myself and offer myself up, and I'm going to keep myself in that package, because I think that like our art is so much larger than the different sort of mediums that we decide to put it in on any given day or during any given project. And so I was having a really interesting conversation with our pal Zoe, another wonderful reader and creative and big book talker, bookstagram. Love her so much. And I voice noted her the same day I voice noted you, and she was like, people just don't know how to talk about art anymore. Like we're losing this skill, this ability. And it was sort of a sobering moment. And because I would say in my community, I'm having wonderful nuanced conversations about art off my phone, off screen, with with my creative circle, and it's so rewarding to me. And we talk a lot about taste, consumers taste versus the artist taste. How do we meet our taste? How do we continue to rise to our taste? And it's a larger conversation. It's a nuanced conversation, and it's not a chronically online conversation. So I found it to be very, very interesting, this whole thing, like kind of on like a philosophical level. But I think for me, I come from a place where I'm like, I'm so excited for my online community to see a different part of me. Like,
Yeah.
I can't show you how good I am at dialogue really on Instagram, but like, here's a whole book that shows you, like, I love dialogue and I'm
Mhm.
really good at it. Like, it's
Yeah.
very exciting to me. And I was so looking forward to that, because I needed sort of a bigger, larger canvas to paint on when it came to showing like that part of my creative self. And I think I am a pretty half glass full person when it comes to my art. And I just had a lot of faith that people would be able to kind of get behind it and be like, oh, Haley's someone who does this. Because I think there certainly were some people who sat down to read Old Enough thinking that it would mirror the writing style that I have online. And I knew that would be the case, but like, babe, I contain magnitudes. Like here
Yeah.
you go. Like, here,
Mhm.
let's.
Yeah, like be open to accepting that and be open to receiving it and learning about it. But I do feel, as like someone who's, been following you for quite some time with your writing, my best friend Paola introduced me to you when we were still both in undergrad, and she'd been following you for years. And would just constantly send me saying, read the caption, read the caption. And I see, like, Old Enough to me is just so literary and prosaic still, and it's just I see them in each other. And I'm currently doing the audiobook, which I know is narrated by your friend. That's how I'm re-consuming it, because I've gotten on an audiobook kick lately. I can only do my chores and tasks now when I have a book in my ears. But I know that you have this theater background. You and I were both musical theater kids, and I've seen videos of you doing spoken word, and your voiceovers on TikTok of your poetry are just so beautiful to listen to. So how important was the audiobook portion of the book creation process for you?
Oh, such a good question. Yeah. So I went in, for years, I've been saying, of course I'm going to do my audiobook. Like, I got to put my theater background to good use. Like, I love reading my own writing.
Mhm.
Up until the week before I was supposed to do it, I was like, I'm doing my audiobook. And then I decided to do a little tutoring session with someone who is a professional, like, audio coach, narrator, whatever. And we got into it, and I was catapulted back into acting school, because I went to school to be an actor, and I left that behind. And I remembered exactly why I left it behind.
Yeah,
I was like, this is not fun. I do not like this. I do not want to do this. And it was because I wasn't going to be able to read my writing. I was going to have to perform my writing. I don't
Mm.
want to do that. The thing with an audiobook that they that the actor, the narrator, has to remember is make every thought new, make it fresh, make it new, because the person listening to it, or the reader, everything is new to them. So even though you've read it already as the actor who's dutifully gone through the script, you have to imbue that freshness to it. And I was like, fresh? I wrote this book 3 years ago. I've read it so many times. Like, I can't, that's not fun. That's fake. I want to read it as the writer. I want to be able to have that very, very layered relationship with the work that I've done. And I just had this, like, I don't love, because I have OCD, my relationship with intuition is not so good, but I do have very strong creative intuition that seems to take up another space in my mind. And I just was like, this is not it. I cannot do this. And so very, very quickly, I was like, oh, an actor needs to do this. But I also was like, I don't like a lot of audiobook performances.
It's a make or break.
It's a make or break, and it's also a very specific like type of reading and performance that for me just like didn't do it. I really prefer when actors are doing audiobooks, like
yeah, because you have to do the dialogue of all the different characters and like assume their personality and their dialect and how they speak.
Right. And because I am a theater person, so much of my book like is, I mean, the characters and the voices are so alive for me. And so I was like, oh, Jenna's got to do this. And my friend Jenna is an actor. She's non-binary. They are a survivor. They're very open with being a survivor. They're bisexual. Like she just occupies so many of the identities that Sav does. And you can't actually ask professional people if they do that. That is it, like if they share those identities, that is illegal. So going into it being like, yes, you are gay. And yes, you can relate to so much of this book, knowing that it just made it much more special. And especially with a story that is so close to home for me. Obviously, it is a work of fiction, but I share so many of the identities that Sav does. I just really needed to feel safe.
Yeah.
And it was also a fact of like, I needed to protect my energy. Like, I want to write. I live to write. If I give away my creative brain space to this audiobook, I don't think that I could have written some of the things that I had to write around pub. And I also, I it's so interesting. The week that I would have recorded that audiobook, I wrote an essay that had been living in me for a very long time, which has yet to find the right home, but when it does, is going to be real good. And it was a big sort of labor to write this essay that had been living in me. I'm very proud of it. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, see, there it is. This would not come out of you if you had done this other thing that even though you said you were going to do for 2 years, I had to swallow my pride and I had to email my team and say, actually, never mind. Not gonna happen. And they were so amazing. It was me and my own ego being like, you said you were gonna do this, but yeah, whatever. Like, I'm so glad that I didn't. And now, yeah. And when I listen to the audiobook, it's amazing because
I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, and Jenna fucking knocked it out of the park. Like, they really gave it every ounce of themselves, and I couldn't because I already did when I wrote the book.
I mean, that would have taken so much extra energy for you, and you unburden yourself of that and then put it towards creating something new. Yeah, exactly. And that's amazing.
Yeah. I think like as a creative person, like as a writer, we all need to kind of follow our creative compass in that way. Like, I'm certainly, every time someone is like, are you writing another book? I'm like, we'll see, because I don't know that my creative compass is taking me that way right now, right this second.
I mean, like, can you appreciate the book that I just fucking wrote?
I know,
like one.
I know it's been out a month. It's a month. I know, but people are so not like that. But it's,
I mean, the girlies are hungry. Like,
they're
I'm hungry, but like whatever you create next, I know is going to be what is right for you and will be appreciated. So you have always said, I mean, your fucking mailer that I received, big bisexual book, big bisexual box. It's an unabashedly gay novel. It's so queer from chapter 1 as a gender and sexuality studies major. When the first line is like, it was the first day of gender and sexuality studies, I was like you really got it. But to me, the gayest part of the book is when Sav sees her old flame Nova and clocks her Titanic Leo haircut, which what, I wrote it down. She deems every bisexual's downfall. True. True. Um, and she says she has a new tattoo on her forearm of a scorpion. It was on the nose, but Nova could afford to be. She was just that hot. And so, as someone who has a scorpion forearm tattoo, I was like, I really identify with this passage. But for you, what was like the gayest thing that, like, whether it's an Easter egg or something when you were writing, you were just giggling to yourself, you're like, hee hee, the gays are gonna love this. Like, what brought you queer joy?
Oh my
What's
God. I mean, so many things. I think for me, like writing Sav's experience, absolutely, but also just giving voice and texture to other characters in the book, like the scene where you meet Vera's partners and like going into sort of detail about this beautiful expansive polyamorous relationship, but also making myself giggle with just, just the like really queer elements of like, the sort of short king lesbian boyfriend with the shoes that are like sky high, like just really painting the world that I've been so lucky to inhabit over the past 5 years or longer, really. I was part of the queer community for like 3 years before I finally was like, and I love a woman. And I sort of, crashed and fell into my gayness in that way, which I really wouldn't have wanted it any other way. But I think for me, though, that the last chapter of my book, which I wrote, I was in a year-long class, right? A year-long novel generator class with the most wonderful teacher, Lynn Stager Strong. She's the author of Want and Flight. She had us do a prompt, and some of my writing students who are here will recognize this prompt, but the prompt is write the ending. And I was, I don't know, halfway through my book, not even. And I just sat down and I literally wrote the end of my book. Like, it's meant to just be a generative prompt to kind of get you out of your head about, because writers are so annoying about endings, like the way that we just are so, our egos when it comes to ending are just so huge. We really force ourselves to have an absolute panic attack when like, babe, just end it, just write the ending. But I did, and I had the best time writing the ending, and the ending is absolutely based off of my experience going to the Woods on Wednesday, which is a bar in Williamsburg that every Wednesday is queer night. And I like Sav really did go to that bar on New Year's many years ago, when it was not a Wednesday and not queer, and saw that bar transform when I was brought there many years later by my lesbian roommate, and just like a sight for the senses to see all of these magnificent queer people of every sort of subtype and genre and stereotype. But like in that last chapter, the people who are in fact just existing, which is what we do, right? Like, we love our labels and we love our niches and we love to kind of gab and joke about what kind of gay we are, but at the end of the day, we do just exist, right? Like, it's not, we don't need to subscribe to any particular queer culture to be queer, especially as bisexuals. It's okay. And I love how I ended the book in that way. And it is also, it's just so gay. It's
so gay.
It's so gay.
I will say, so my mom read your book, loved it. She said just sobbing at it. But my mom cries at Folgers commercials. So we love Estella, but she was like 20 pages in and she texted me. She was like, so I just started and I've already had to Urban Dictionary a few terms. And I was like, oh God, what terms? She was like, what's a pillow princess? What's a touch me not? I'm like, oh my God, you are educating a whole, generation of people on queer terminology. And I love that.
Yeah. I love when I get those comments, especially from moms. I've gotten it from multiple moms, the Googling, as you should be doing with any book that occupies a space or identity that is not directly yours, that is normal to do and important. And I just love that. I love expanding literacy, but I also love that I didn't write a 101 book. I'm like, yeah, you should be doing a little extra research. Like, that's good. That's actually a really exciting part of the reading experience, when you walk away and you're like, I learned something new. That's preferred, actually. But I just love, I love having written a book that is about so many different things, that even if you're not queer, you're gonna take up space in this book. And even if you're not a survivor, you're going to take up space in this book, and so many of the other themes. But it is absolutely, you know what, another thing that a lot of people have brought up during tour is like, and someone really said it very specifically, of like, your book is not ageist. And I was like, okay, I love that. Like, it's not. I am not someone who's gonna, well, obviously I wrote about college students, which, like, that's a genre, that new adult genre is new and doesn't even exist in many countries. Like, that's why I don't have a UK book, because new adult literally doesn't exist, because for whatever reason, people don't think that like early 20s is a important time of life to write about and to read about. You know, I could soapbox on that for a long time, but also, like, there are older people in this book, and they're good and they're nuanced, and I have, no part of me wants to write about older people being bad. That's not interesting to me. That's pretty that would be a pretty cheap take, right? And often the parts of older folks, older women especially, like, that are things that they hopefully might be able to grow out of, like, that's just how society conditioned them to be. Like, so many of the things about consent and assault that are seeped into us are unfortunately from our parents and our parents' generation, and that's also not their fault. Especially not anyone's fault who was assigned female at birth. That's how society fucked us, and we're unlearning, and that's why Sapp's book is unlearning. And so it is a book for everyone.
No, I mean, how much of a healing read it was for me and so many survivors. It shows so many different experiences of how women, people deal with that sort of trauma. You have, Sav, you have the girl from her class,
Laura.
Laura. Their response, Izzy, even, like, you have their responses to what happened to them, and you see and hold space for all these different reactions without judgment. There is no right way to handle that kind of trauma, and however you need to do it, it's right for you. And I know this is such a big theme of your book that is so important, and I'd love to know what you hope survivors get out of reading Old Enough.
It counts, and I believe you.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. And that when you say to yourself, but it's complicated, that's the baseline, and it still counts.
Yeah, simple as. So you're also kind of back to the internet. You're kind of the bisexual mommy internet big sister that we all know and love and adore. And this will be my last kind of discussion question, and then I want to open it up to our audience. So start thinking, start typing. I would love, snippet advice for 3 groups that I know are in here. The baby gays.
Yes.
The people going through friendship breakups.
Yes.
And the writers. Give us some Haley wisdom.
I got it. Okay. For my baby gays, look, yes, you're new to something, but may we all be new to something in this life. It's a long life. We should be learning all the time, but it does not discount all the wisdom that you have from everything that has led you up to this beautiful discovery that you've made. So the imposter syndrome is real, especially if you are bi. It is extra real. I'm just going to say that. But don't forget everything that brought you here. Don't forget the full and expansive person that you are. That was something that I forgot when I came out, like this idea that almost like I had to start over, or that I had, I had so much catching up to do, things like that. Like, sure, that can be true to an extent, but like I came out because I came into myself, because I let myself open myself up to a part of me that I had been developing over a long period of time. And my body finally said, hey, you're safe to do this. And so I bring your entire personhood into your queerness. Like you do not have to discount all the wisdom that you have from just being alive for how many years you've been alive. Bring that into it. Like there's a place for that wisdom and all those beautiful parts of you. The whole point of queerness is that you get to be as big and loud and multifaceted as you want. So don't confuse yourself and say that you have to dull down other parts of you that perhaps you equate to your straightness. I think that like it all gets to be there. That's why it's sort of like this bizarre canon event that like baby gays will like all of a sudden start dressing like really, really mask because they think that's like what queerness begs of them. And then eventually you're just like, no, I like painting my nails, and like it's cool to try the new Tarte lip gloss. Like it's fine. Like
hyper femininity is gay as fuck.
So gay. It's so gay, and it counts. And then also for me, like a big part of coming into my queerness is like I actually like I have a lot of masculine qualities in my personality, and I always have. Like I am I am like the alpha in most of my relationships. I am like my partner says I have the confidence of a cis man. Like, and I did not need to let that go because like I'm femme or like I'm a bottom or whatever. Like these phrases and these like turns of phrase, like they can really fuck us up in some ways. Like I look back on sort of the masculinity that I've developed as a woman, and I find it so empowering, and I find it to be sort of actually like a huge sort of signal of my queerness, of the parts of sort of like conditioned femininity that I actually got rid of a long time ago when I came into myself, especially after college. And I almost like left that behind for a second and then brought it back and was like, I've always been this way. Like, yes. And also I've always been gay. I'm just like now putting words to something that my body has always known. Yeah. So that's sort of a long-winded way of like, don't discount the wisdom of your humanity just because you're trying something new. Not trying's the wrong word, but like inhabiting a space sort of loudly that you didn't before. And then for the friendship breakups, it's so easy to put the blame on ourselves and like what went wrong, and how could I be so bad at friendships? Why do I keep losing friends? Like all of these things, you're allowed to fully blame that on society. You do get to take ownership of the mistakes that you made and the ways in which you may have shown up in a way where perhaps like if you had engaged in conflict earlier and on, the relationship might have had ways to repair, but society didn't teach you how to do that. And when you have your sort of come to Jesus moment of like, oh wow, I simply don't have those tools, you can really take the blame off yourself. It's not your fault. We were like forced into this way of being that was so unsustainable, and like longevity in friendships take a lot of work, and they take a lot of acknowledgement of how important individuality is, and space, and time to go away and time to come back. And though that mode of thinking and that awareness, like I've had to teach myself that in the past 5 years after I took my sort of vow of celibacy from best friendships, in the sort of hyper close enmeshment style of friendship that like has been glorified for whatever stupid reason. It is really not your fault. It's really like, we got fucked from the beginning. Now with that awareness, if you don't incorporate the tools, don't be so mean to yourself, but like take some responsibility there. But again, the shame wave, it's just not a good use of our time. Really hard, easier said than done, but like, just remember, it's not you, it's patriarchy. It's usually
put that on a pillow.
It's usually what it comes down to most of the time.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So that's that. Writers, so many things. My students, I spew so many things at you, and whatever sticks. But I think before you even start to think like, why does my voice count? There's so many people who write the same stories. It does. There's no replica of you. You are the only one. So of course your story counts, and of course your voice counts. Specificity is universality. So write what you know, write it as specific and detailed as it is. It does not matter if that was not someone else's experience. When you write your humanity down, we as other humans will get it. We just have that innate sense. We can do that. We'll relate to it. And being a writer, when it is not a hobby, when it is a career path, means that we are showing up ready to shake hands with all of the parts of being a writer that are uncomfortable and unpleasant. And if you are uninterested in doing that, if you are uninterested in sort of stepping up to the table and being like, I am willing to explore rejection, uncertainty, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, if those areas are a no-go, that's okay. Writing is a hobby, and that is absolutely fine. But if writing is a career pursuit, you have to find in you some way to be interested in the parts of the class in the university of your life that have a bigger learning curve because they don't feel good. The baseline, unfortunately, is some kind of discomfort. And what also lives on the other side of that coin is so much fulfillment. I love being a writer. It's the only thing that I ever want to be. And every day I shake hands with the demon that just comes along with picking this path in life. And so if the fear has to live alongside the action, it must, it does not work any other way. Yeah.
Love. Alrighty. Don't be shy, people. What is the question?
Ooh.
Oh my God, we just got like so many at once. Alrighty.
Okay.
Like everyone was typing them and just pressed enter. Wow. Okay.
I'm so ready. Okay.
Quick time check, Haley. Do you have a hard stop at 1, or can we go a little over?
No, I can hang and talk to you all day. No, I'm so excited. Okay.
Get to these.
I'm gonna hopefully this is how you say your name, Shelby, something along the lines of Shelby. Let me just read your question. One of the parts of the book that has really stuck with me is the dissonance Sav felt when she met her assaulter's curtain partner, and how Sav really liked her at first, and then finding out who she was. I felt that in my body in a really uncomfortable but also good in a way. Ugh. Yes. I So the essay that I was talking about, the essay that I wrote during the audiobook being recorded that has yet to find a home, is actually a whole essay based on that specific element of the book, because it's something that I think about a lot as a survivor. Who do our abusers get to be after they have permanently harmed us? It's such a unfortunate thing that we are left to hold. Yet another part of our trauma is like weirdly still holding space for the person who has harmed us, perhaps the most we will ever be harmed. And the sort of question that I have always is like, in another part of the same life that our abusers, get to live, are they a good person? Can they be a good person? And can they be a good person to someone that they date or love? And it is very confusing. But I think there's also the element of like, why wouldn't we like the person that our abuser likes too? Like, what would make it so we don't like them? And how it's just so utterly complicated, but it's real, right? Like, they go on to live a life, as much as we often don't want them to. In the rare occurrence that they get locked up, okay, not so much, but most of the time, we know, unfortunately, that's not what happens. And so I would say it's a part of the book that, like, it is like so much of the book, so many of the themes of the book, like, they don't exist in a binary. Like, obviously queerness, bisexuality doesn't exist in a binary. Being assaulted doesn't exist in a binary. There's no black and white with it, which is like what we're told is that there is a right and a wrong way, or like a way that counts and a way that doesn't. We know that's not true, and that's why, like, part of the healing from assault can feel very ambiguous and nonlinear. And I think it's just another part of that. And so it's just something that's been very sticky in my mind for a long time. So I wanted to write it down.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's so much. No, I feel like that's good. That's a response I like. So thank you for that question.
Rihanna is next. Was there a point when your creative output felt like it was falling short of your creative taste? How did you push through that? That is what I'm going through right now. Relatable.
So relatable. And I think that's like relates to what I was just saying with the sort of writer advice. That's so often going to be the case that you don't feel like you're meeting your taste. One is, I do try to give myself a lot of grace of like, pursuing our taste should be a sort of a lifelong pursuit. So we don't have to nail it with our current project. We can get as close to it as we can, but like, we also, like, I feel like being a writer is like a comorbidity with being a perfectionist a lot of the time. And that's also something that we have to like really work on, is like perfectionism and like art. They don't really like live alongside each other in a cohesive way. It's not super helpful. So part of it is just giving myself grace that, like, probably not going to meet my taste, and like, how exciting is it that I get to spend a life sort of working towards that? That's like, if we automatically met our taste, it wouldn't be very interesting to keep going. So like, we like a chase. And then, so with this specific book, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I didn't think at first that the writing with Matt and the writing with the boyfriend early on. What was his name?
I don't know. There are no men in the novel to me.
It doesn't matter. But I just didn't feel like that writing was particularly alive. And so I started to feel really weird about that. And then I was like, of course it doesn't feel very alive, because it's not alive in Savannah. These relationships are sort of dull, and they're fragmented, and they're perhaps dissociative. And so actually that does meet my taste. And so that's why, like, feelings when you write are not necessarily that important. Like, sometimes we need to bring it back to like craft and skill of like, oh, I'm writing about a relationship for my character that is lacking in a lot of ways. I'm writing about comp het in a lot of ways, which is so dissociative, right? And so the texture of this writing like feels dull to me because I want it to be that way. And so I think that was a time where I had to really push back against the taste question and be like, no, this is a skill element, a craft element that's really working in my favor. And it doesn't matter if it's the best writing I've ever done, because in this novel, this is achieving what I set out to achieve. But is it as exciting as writing all the scenes with Wes? No. And that's okay too. Like, a lot of being a writer is not being excited by what we're writing, but
it matches the spirit of the main character's feelings of the
exactly. It's so yeah, I kind of had to push through that a little bit. And also kind of like be sometimes like being a writer is like being a babysitter or a parent and being like, you got to eat this broccoli because it's going to like feel good in the long run, but it is going to be kind of boring right now. And that's okay. Okay. Thank you, Brianna, for that.
All right. We got Kylie. Speaking of that Muna song, which for those who are watching this, we talked about I Know a Place as the perfect ending song for the final scene by Muna. So speaking of that Muna song, music, and queer music in particular, create such a layered and textured environment in this book. I'm so curious what you would curate an old enough playlist to look like. But what does the interplay between music and writing look like in your process?
Such a good question. I actually have so much imposter syndrome when it comes to writing about music. I don't like, it's interesting. I think in a very reductive way, I say to people often like, I'm not a music girly. It's actually not true. It's just that music is so intense that I can't always interact with it, because it's very stimulating, and I kind of become like all consumed in a way. So I have to create some separateness, some space from it. So when I'm writing, I'm writing in silence, or I'm listening to jazz. It's really one of the two, unless I really need to like put myself where my character is, like maybe in a party scene or a very sort of like out loud place. Then I might put on, Taylor Swift, or there's Taylor Swift in this book, or queer music. But that's very rare. So I actually would say that so much of the music that comes into the book is coming from me doing like a character study of queerness or of girlhood. Like Taylor Swift is very intentional with Sapp's relationship to Izzy. Also, I'm very fascinated by how Taylor Swift is just as relevant for my teenage years, because again, I'm 30, to how it is now, that like if Taylor Swift is symbolism for girlhood, how interesting it is that like I can put it in that novel, and in my novel, and it's timeless. Yeah. I like totally nerd out about that. Like as a writer, I think that's very fascinating.
Yeah, as a Swiftie, they are.
I know you are. I know.
Izzy and Sav to me are the Fearless album.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Because that's like, what we grew up with. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I bring music into things I write based on what I see, what I watch people interact with. It's a character study for me, you know. I'm like the biggest eavesdropper, the biggest people watcher, because I'm an only child, and like I grew up with like being inept at social skills. And so a lot of it is like me taking in what's around me and being like, oh, this is really part of the culture, and so this will make sense and readers will relate to it, even though I might not have these songs aren't necessarily the songs that light me up. But I did do a very cool podcast with Audible and Pandora, where the podcast is like, I curated a playlist for Old Enough. And so I have
send it to me.
well, it's like I talk about it for 3 minutes and then I play the song that I'm talking about and like go through it. And I was so nervous to do this podcast. And it's actually one of my favorite things I've ever done. And I really now really try to tell myself like that it's not appropriate for me to say that I'm not a music person. Like I do deserve that identity too. I just have a very specific relationship to music. But I can't tell you how affirming it is that you felt like music did play a big part in this, because I tried really hard. And that feels good to me. Also, my editor is like a professional clarinet player. And so I was so nervous that I was going to do music wrong. And she was going to be like, rip up my contract.
Music is like art. There is no wrong.
Right. And for me, it's like jazz, like constant jazz.
Love that.
Anyway, okay, so
Alice. Okay, Alice is asking, you said you're a non-linear writer, so I'm curious about how intentional you were with structuring the novel. 1, the book is grounded so much in the gender and sexuality studies class. Did you always want the book's timeline to start and finish with the class? And then 2, the story unfolded feeling like how realization can unfold for many of us, whether it's about our own sexuality, realizing you're a survivor, or realizing you are a survivor, in a way where there's often an instigating thought or conversation that unravels from there. And once you know, it's almost like you can't believe that you didn't know before. Is that a feeling you specifically wanted the reader to feel, or did that just happen to come together like that? I'm not going to read your apology because you shouldn't apologize for such a good question.
A wonderful question. Please don't ever apologize for the way that your brain like navigates writing. That's so beautiful. Such a gift to me as a writer. Okay, so I wrote all the 16-year-old chapters first in 2018, and then I shelved them for years until 2020. I didn't know. I knew it was a book. I knew it was something, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then ultimately, because I was new to writing a fiction novel, I really did need to just learn that like plot works really well with a timeline. It was just that was just a craft skill.
You're good.
So did I want the book's timeline to start and finish the class? I didn't. I just chose it. I was like, I'm gonna write a book, and how am I gonna structure it? This works. I can use this container and I'll write into this container. So it wasn't like that came from sort of a place in me that like, I was like, oh, how inspiring. I was like, this is a nice container and I like it. And choices can be kind of like mundane like that with writing, like, oh, now I can sort of unspool all of my creative juice into this nice solid container. And so that worked really well. And then the second part, I love this observation of my writing, because one thing that I do as a writer is I am also a dialogue first writer. So most of my scenes start with a monologue. So I kind of find the thesis of my chapter and like the realization or the musing that I'd really like to, parse out. And then I'll write everything around it. So that's when I'll bring in all the craft elements of like, place and time and who's in the room and just all the arc of every chapter, middle, beginning, and end. But there will be sort of like a central thought or theme that I want to build from. And so I think it's just like who I am, what I'm particularly interested in as a person, as a writer, is sort of my writing mentor talks about, you want to get to the balsamic reduction, like the most sort of like not reduced in a reductive way, but like how can you get to, I already used the word marrow, but it is sort of a go-to word for me, so forgive me for using it again, the marrow, right, of the underbelly of what it is I'm trying to say. And then sort of it's like almost like a little sneaky of like, I'm going to get to this, but I'm going to try to get to this in a way where you won't know that I'm getting to it. But like, this is the thing I'm most excited to say. But I love this thing of like, once you know the thing, you can't ever unknow the thing. And you're like, oh, but how didn't I realize that like this was a thing? This is like kind of an intense thing to bring up. So trigger warning for like unpacking sexual assault, but like the part of the book where Sav fights so hard against claiming the identity of survivor because she is intimate with her abuser again for a second time, sort of, consciously and of her own volition, which relates to my experience. And I never seen that written about, and was something I was nervous to write about. And probably one of the most affirming thing is that I have had people say that's what happened to me. And I've never seen it written about. And then I did a podcast with my friend Allegra, who's a therapist, and there's like a literal term for doing that. And it's like, I need to look up what it was, that like it's a clinical psychological phenomenon, a thing that people do, that survivors do. It makes, and then you think about it and it's like, of course, it makes so much
You're trying to rewrite the experience and reclaim control.
You're repairing, you're doing so much. But it took me 7 years for me to realize like that was the thing that I needed to unlock, because that's what I said. Well, I did it again. So how could I have done it again? That doesn't count anymore. So how could I? And now I'm so liberated from that thought. That my response is, of course it counts. Of course, it makes perfect sense. But that it's not a linear journey to unpacking trauma. And so that chapter, that scene where Sav is unpacking that with Marie, that's that thesis of that those couple of lines, or that paragraph, where Marie, I think, says something like, I don't know what she says. I don't remember, but no, she says to Sav, why do you think someone might do that? And Sav has to kind of search for the answer with herself. And that is one of those scenes where it's like, of course, but you don't know until you know. And then once you know, you can't unknow it. So I love that observation. Such smart readers. You're so smart.
There are so many more questions. I do have a hard stop in 15.
Okay, so we'll get to
we'll get to what we can.
And if these questions, you can voice note me these questions or DM me these questions, and I will answer them because I love talking about it. So,
all right.
Okay, great.
Next up, Sarah, I really loved your portrayal of friendships and how they are further incorporated into a community as a whole. Friendship groups are so hard to navigate, especially with 3 main people. How did you manage to create such a balanced 3-person friend group with Sam, Candace, and Vera? That is such a good question, because Lord, friend groups have never been my thing. I feel like I operate best with individual friendships and bringing everyone together and being able to still hang together individually and not get ouchy oopsies. So would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I'm probably just writing from my own experience of like, I literally have spent the past 5 years being like, no more best friends for a while. How do you exist in a community of people where you go to different friends for different things? And I think I probably thought about it that way of like, Sav can go to Vera for like conversations about assault, unpacking femininity within bisexuality, unpacking bisexuality. They can kind of go to do the deep stuff. And Candace it's not that Candace is comedic relief, but Candace is more that sort of like animal to animal knowing that you're safe with a friend, but it's not necessarily about like highbrow elevated conversations that are like deeply psychological. It's more just like, this is a person who gets me, loves me, I feel safe with, and I can actually go to more of those childlike places where we're just silly and we're coexisting. And that's vulnerable for Sav. That's vulnerable for most people who had to grow up too fast. So like Sav has the people that she goes to for different things. And Wes is also like that too, even though that's a romantic relationship. So, I think I'm just bringing in what I've sort of practiced and studied over the past 5 years since my last big friendship breakup. And then as a writer, I typically write, or in my plays, I usually write 2-person plays. And I was just very excited about the challenge of not only writing a 3-person friendship, but the classroom setting where there's lots of voices in a room. I was like, what if I can't do it? And then I was like, I'm going to try.
And you did it.
And I did it. And now it's like kind of easy for me. Not easy, but like, now I'm like, okay, what can I challenge myself with next? So yeah, great question. Thank you.
Athena asks, is Sav's poem or a snippet of it floating around anywhere where she at Wesley's open mic?
Everyone loves asking me that. I would vom if I wrote a poem within a novel. That would be, I think, because I am a poet, that is so cringe to me. So no, it literally doesn't exist. And was one of those things where I was like, I'm simply not going to do it. And that is something you're allowed to do as a writer. Has it been brought up at every tour stop? Yes. But you want to read some good poetry, you can go to my Instagram and just be like, pick one and decide.
It's one of them. It's definitely one of them.
But no, I could not, like, that to me is like just too cringe. I don't know exactly why, but for me, it's a writer, for a personal writer ick that would ick me to the moon. But so nice that everyone wants the poem. But no, it doesn't exist.
No. Catherine, very curious about the cover art. So when I wanted to ask this at the Strand, and I did, and Haley told me, she was like, no one's gonna ask about the title or the cover art. That's like what someone on your team told you. And I was like, no, that's literally my first question because I'm such a visual person. Cover art.
No, I got into that was my first little tiff with my agent. But that was because we were both really overwhelmed because, sorry to break everyone's hearts, but I have yet to meet an author who had an enjoyable experience picking a cover. It's just really not fun. It goes you to your agent, to your editor, to the designers, to your publisher. So it's like this crazy game of telephone, and there's like data involved, and you don't get to have a direct conversation with the designer, so it doesn't feel particularly collaborative. And it just kind of sucks. I'm sorry to tell you that. But I kind of like that there's a part of the process that just like I really had to grow and really had to work through. That was a good challenge for me. But I literally hated every single cover that I got. And unfortunately, some of them were actually quite offensive to me and weird. And I don't know why or how, but things get lost in translation. And so I realized I didn't want an illustrated cover. I realized that they were using stock images from like one of those websites where you can like buy art. I found it. I made an account. I think I probably paid for it. And then I spent 4 hours in an absolutely compulsive manic episode downloading as many images as I could find. And that is just the truth, everyone. And I found that image, and I got to choose my own cover, basically. But it wasn't like, I got to choose my own cover, I'm so lucky. I really did have to have a long conversation with my OCD therapist about what I had done, because that was 4 hours of my life I'll never get back. But it did work out. That's probably the only time I've suffered for my art in many years. But I love the cover. I'm so happy with it. The designers did do a great job with the colors and the font. And I told them the first note I ever gave was, I want you to be able to see my name across the room. And they absolutely killed that. I love how, I love the font choice, and those things are really important. Like, I don't want to discredit that at all. Like, we made it work. But I love my cover. I love this idea of, trying to straighten something that can't be tamed. I love the sort of hand coming in with the black polish. It's very girlhood coded for me, but it's not explicitly feminine. This sort of grooming idea. I love that you can't see the body. That was like a big hurdle for me. I don't, especially with folks who are assigned female at birth, like showing bodies in books or describing bodies in books, I really don't like to do. And I unfortunately was the first few covers I was getting very thin, sort of societally acceptable like versions of beauty and femininity, and that felt so wrong to me, because I don't really know Sapp's body type, but it wasn't that. So I'm so happy with the cover, but like, that's the truth. And I'm going to be honest, like, I do wish I had known before going into it that so many authors really, really struggle with it. And it's because it's 300 pages of like your art that comes from the depths of you, and then someone slaps a single image on it. And so there is also like the psychological hurdle of like letting go of your ego a bit with it. But I did have a really good like conflict and repair with my agent about it, where she got overwhelmed. My agent's first book deal, and she had a moment where she was like, no one's ever going to ask you about this. The cover's not for you. And I was like, that is not true. And then we talked through it and we worked through it. So it was emotional, but art is emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute. All right, we're gonna go to Sarah's question, because I see a lot of exclamation points under it. I think my fave part of the book was the doomed narrative of Izzy and Sav. Their climactic scene where they finally confront everything they've been too afraid to say to each other was so wrenching. And I love how hard the line hit about how for Izzy, this was about choosing her brother and protecting her idea of him. But for Sav, this was about choosing her rapist. What was it like for you to navigate that relationship and plot out that arc?
Great question. I think for me that those two lines, again, that's like the thesis of that scene. Izzy is not the antagonist of this novel. She's a complicated woman. So is Sav. Neither of them are perfect. And that is just sort of the crux of why their relationship just can't go on, or at least that's my view of these characters. Everyone is entitled to thinking about how their relationship will or won't go on from that point. But that is just, when you boil it down, those are those characters' absolute truths. And so there's a dissonance there's a clashing, that's that uncomfortable edge that they come up against. And that was a really hard scene to write. But it was really worth it. And that was a scene where I was like, how am I going to do this justice? Like, this big conflict scene, this rupture, this climax. And I'm really proud of what I came to. But that's something I knew from the beginning, that was
Yeah.
going to be, the crux of that, of why their relationship would fall apart.
Yeah. Joanna asks, I love how overtly queer Sav's campus was, but unfortunately that's not always the case for a lot of students like myself. So fair. Do you have any advice on how to find community, and does it get better / easier after college? How have you
Yeah.
found queer community as an adult? I know you talk a lot about this on Instagram.
Yeah. I wrote a very like idealist college campus because I wanted to live in the joy of that for 300 pages and work on that for a year. How fun for me. I know it's not the case. I also wasn't out at college, and there was a lot of reasons why I was being like held back from that identity. So there's like mourning and grief that I have around that. This is one, like what you're doing right now in this group, like don't be hard to get. If someone asks a really interesting question, or someone's super funny in the chat, or just you're like, this person gets me, create an offline relationship with that person. Like I am unabashedly like a pursuer of friends. Like if I like, with Nina, like I was like, oh, I have to know this girl. Like this is my girl. Like this is how we're gonna, this is a person I need in my life. So I think you have to be very brave, and you have to tell yourself that you deserve to be known, and pursue people in that way. I do think it can be easier after college or school in general, because you really get to like choose who you're around. You get to choose who's in your orbit. Whereas like in college, I think sometimes it can just be like, you're here because you got into this school, and like you're here. We don't necessarily have so much in common, or like just because you like this, this is your major doesn't mean that you're a good person or someone that like I want to know. But I think it's really important. Like I think it's so freaking cool that you all are in Sapph-Lit, and that like you commit to it. Like this is such a good example of the person that you are. Like you've gone out of your way to find a community centered around something you love, which is reading. That's huge, because so much, especially of queer culture, can feel like you're going to bars, or you're going clubbing, or you're like watching Drag Race or whatever, and that doesn't necessarily fill people up. Like there are quiet queers, there are grandma queers, like Nina and me. Like I love to go out dancing, but that's like not what I'm doing. And so the kind of queer people that I need to be around are just exist in a different sort of like culture. And I've had to go out and pursue those people. So be really brave, but also, like more things like Sapph-Lit, like more like find more community spaces centered around something that you really love. And yeah, your people are waiting for you. Like I don't like when people subscribe to this idea of like, it's so hard to make friends. It's like, it's so hard to do a lot of things in life. Like people are around your corner. I promise you, 1,000% you will find your people.
Yeah.
Great. Should we do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. All right. You pick.
Okay. I'm just kind of looking for, there's not that many left.
I also love the idea, Emma, of Candace's Chapel Roan. I totally agree.
Oh my God, I love that. I like that is, but also casual is I feel like Nova and Sav's anthem.
Yes.
Like that song.
I love that song.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that song too. Oh God, okay. I got lost. What would this book have meant to you in your early 20s? Well, see, I wrote this book for 16-year-old me, so this would have been real helpful. But to be honest, in my 20s, no, this would have been helpful, because do y'all know the artist Sir Baby Girl?
No, I don't.
Okay, queer icon. Their name's Kelsey. Kelsey and I went to college together, and Kelsey was like my Nova, but like never acted on. Also, Kelsey's Scorpio and does not like me. So whatever, that is what it is. I don't live in this life to be liked, but I just remember I was like always looking at Kelsey and being like, you're not pretty, you're something else. Like, what is it? Why are you, where's your makeup? You know, I just so confused. And it's like that scene at the open mic where Sav is watching Nova for the first time and it's like just so whatever. And I had that with Kelsey. I had it like this my whole senior year, especially. And I just like didn't have the words for it. And I think if I read my book now, I basically rewrote my experience. Like, you know, Nova was inspired by Kelsey. And I think that would have been really helpful to have some language around attraction that isn't attraction to cis men, because that's so prescribed to us from such a young age that like it gets so
ingrained.
It's so ingrained, and it's also so layered, and it's so confusing to actually boil down what attraction is in a more classically like cis het way.
It's like, am I attracted to them, or do I like the attention that they're giving?
Yeah, do I like the attention, or like I know that, you know, cis, like you know when like you meet a guy and they're just like classically what you're told to be attracted to, and all that. It's so confusing, but it's also so superficial. And with coming into my queerness, I was like, what is this like feeling? It's so void of games, and it's so void of like a societal like rule book. And so just to have language around like especially an attraction that doesn't always feel explicitly sexual at first, because it's just sort of like you're just enamored by someone, that would have been really helpful to know that counts, because bisexuality is so prescribed as being so sexual and being promiscuous and just and
greedy
and slutty and everything like that. And mine isn't really that's not how I would claim my bisexuality. Like, you know, not that I'm not a slut, I am, but like it's just so much more expansive than that, and it exists in a very wise place in me. So yeah.
Haley, thank you so much for being here and spending this time with us. I had a blast, and I know everyone else did. And take up Haley's offer. Like, she is so much fun to DM and chat with. So if your question didn't get answered, take her up on that offer if you are burning for an answer. And I hope we have you back here whenever that may be.
I will absolutely be back. This was a dream for me while I was writing a book, just envisioning having this chat with Sapph-Lit, being a Sapph-Lit pick, even with something I dreamed of, and it really kept me going. So this is just huge. I'm so appreciative of this group. And
I just put my hand to my heart and you can see my sunburn.
I love it. That's very old enough coded.
It's very old enough coded.
Really is. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And if I didn't answer your question, just DM me. I'm chronically online, as we know, as we've talked about. So thank you.
All right. Love you so much.
Love you.
Bye, everyone.